First question. How does one deal with a partner who makes unilateral decisions and purchases, for example, an expensive second vehicle, in a situation where that partner does not have the means to make the payments on a second vehicle while still contributing toward the agreed upon joint household expenses? Financial problems are such a mess, partly because we're so attached to the money involved. In a partnership, if you really want a partnership, you have to first agree that it's a partnership in every way. If you have a partnership where you don't agree that it's going to be a partnership in every way, you're screwed, because whatever it is you don't agree on is going to come up over and over again and sabotage your partnership. So in a real partnership, you agree that money, sex, everything is shared. In a business partnership, you don't get to just spend anything you want without talking to your partner, and that works in personal relationships too. So in a real partnership, nobody spends, I'm just telling you what works, I'm not telling you what you have to do. Nobody spends anything over a certain number of dollars, X dollars, without the agreement of both parties. And that would prevent the foolishness that you just described, because you both would have talked about the second car before it happened. This is really important in a whole lot of things. I've seen marriages brought down by disagreements about money over and over again. I know a man and his wife, for example, who they're married. They agreed to a financial partnership, and then his wife unilaterally just decided, because as their children grew older, they moved out of the house, and his wife decided that, and she didn't do this consciously, in all fairness, that she wanted the 3 boys who'd moved out of the house to continue to like her. So she decided to buy them. So here are these 3 boys who are in their mid-20s to 30, and she still financially supports them as though they were 12. Well, she made that decision on her own, and her husband finally decided, this isn't how a partnership works. We both have to agree to whatever is spent. And she said, well, but this is the right thing to do. Well, that's not how partnerships go. So what if you've got a partnership where she decides that she's going to spend, and I'm not exaggerating, $1,000 per month per kid to sustain them in, frankly, a style of luxury that I didn't know till I was 50. But her boys live like little princes, and she does that because they like her for it. So she decides $1,000 per month per kid, and he decides it would be more reasonable to give them $200 per month per kid, which frankly is much more reasonable for kids who are, not disabled. Nobody's in a wheelchair. Everybody can work. So there's no reason that they can't support themselves entirely. $200 a month is a gift. How do you resolve that? Because they're in a partnership. Do you average it? No, it's not how a partnership goes. If you and I are in business partnership, and I decide that I'm willing to risk $200,000 on a venture, you decide you're willing to risk $1 million. Guess how that works? We risk the least amount that we can both agree on. So if you're willing to risk $1 million, well, obviously you're willing to risk 200,000. Follow? Because that's less. So the amount that we risk as business partners is $200,000, because we both agree on that. You just want it to be more. Well, I don't. And in a partnership, it kind of goes like 2 oxen who are yoked together. No kidding. I know we're kind of past the days where people even know what it means to yoke 2 oxen together. But you don't necessarily, when you put 2 oxen together, put the 2 strongest oxen together, because what matters is that they pull equally. They both have to hit the yoke at exactly the same time. You'll go to state fairs where horses and oxen still do this. If they're equally matched, they can pull more than if you have a strong one and a weaker one. So it's similar in a partnership. You have to pull together, and the stronger ox cannot pull faster than the weaker ox can go. Otherwise, he ends up dragging the ox behind on his back end. Same in a partnership. So here the woman is willing to spend $1,000 a month. The husband was willing to spend $200. So what's the amount that they're going to spend? $200. Now, of course, she screams bloody murder. Well, you're getting your way. Well, it could look like that. But a partnership has to be an agreement, a unanimous agreement, or you don't move at all. In fact, the only other solution other than $200 a month is to spend none. Until you come up with a number that both people support, no action is taken. That is a partnership. And so the second car would never have been bought, following your example. But now, let's suppose that you don't actually have a true monetary partnership. You both contribute to household expenses, but that's all. You don't share everything else equally, like discretionary income, luxury spending, and so on. In the first place, that's a dangerous way to run a partnership, but let's suppose you do that. So then if the second partner buys a car that's too expensive, you would allow that partner to go under because they made the choice to make the expensive purchase. If you make the choice, you live with the consequences. You have to let that partner fail to make the payments and have the car repossessed. And if that partner comes to you all crying and tearful that that you need to save them from their choice, you can't do it. You can't save somebody from accountability. It's another reason to have equal monetary partnership and not do this business of not sharing everything completely. Decisions, consequences, and everything. Best answer I have with the limited information I was given. I don't know all the details of your partnership, but I have heard this kind of question many times. This reader says, I'm not quite sure how to ask my question. I had dinner with a friend last night. As usual, as I was telling her how I have noticed that my interactions at seminars and other group events were not very successful, I feel like I don't really have anything to say to other attendees, and I find it difficult to network. And when I do speak with people, it is often very superficial conversation. She immediately offered a solution and worked very hard to persuade me that I needed to do what she was telling me. Whenever I mention an area of my life where I'm struggling, dissatisfied, fearful, whatever, this person always presses her solution on me without my asking for advice or suggestions. Of course, when the roles are reversed and I offer her advice, she never takes my advice or suggestions. This is pretty common stuff, regrettably. On the whole, people listen very poorly. Most people don't listen at all. It's really quite common for me to be talking to people and I speak, they respond, I speak, they respond, and after a while I say, do you realize that you haven't addressed a single sentence I've spoken? You change the subject every time. It's actually fairly normal. Almost to the point of uniformity amongst people, which is kind of sad. So it would not be uncommon for you not to be listened to or not to be understood by the person that you're talking about. I experienced that a lot in my own life. What would make it a little more difficult for you to, which would of course make it more difficult for you to connect in a crowd because people don't listen to you and you're looking for somebody to listen to you. So then you feel even more isolated. You don't know what to say. You engage in superficial conversation hoping somebody will listen to that and they don't listen to that either. The thing is, I know you and I find no difficulty connecting with you. So there's a lesson there. You are not difficult to connect with. But some people can't connect with you because they're not listening to you and not seeing you. You like to be understood before you're corrected. Gee, so do most people. You continue. I've noticed that I'm particularly sensitive to other people telling me what to do, especially when I haven't asked for advice. It feels to me like the person isn't really listening to me or seeing me. It doesn't just feel like that. You're way too kind. Very few people do listen, and that's a lonely feeling for you. You're dying to be listened to, which is really all you've said so far. And you're really sensitive to what happens around you, so you notice when people aren't listening to you. Some people talk in an endless stream and don't even notice when other people don't listen. In fact, with some people, I'm pretty sure I could go have lunch away from the house, come back, and they'd still be talking. So some people don't notice, but in their defense, they started off wanting somebody to listen to them. And when people don't listen to them long enough, they talk more and more and more to the point where all they do is talk, and then nobody even gets a chance to listen. At least then they don't experience rejection. They just talk all the time. You continue. This time I spoke up and I said something to my friend like, do you know that you have a habit of fixing things, a habit of offering solutions instead of just listening? Now, I said it in a normal voice, much like I would say, do you know that AAA has repair shops? While I was trying to be gentle, I probably could have conveyed that information better. Yeah, probably. We'll get to that in a minute. I could maybe have asked her to just listen. In hindsight, I can see how she might have felt blamed or attacked. So there are really two separate questions going on here, or two separate issues. First is her listening. I can't really judge whether she was listening to you because I wasn't there. You said she offered solutions instead of listening, but that doesn't necessarily mean she didn't listen. She might have listened. Small chance, I know, but she might have, and that you didn't realize she was listening. If you haven't had somebody listen to you for your whole life, the first couple of times that it happens, you might not recognize it. I've had that happen with lots of people who've been here to visit me. Nobody's ever listened to them. I genuinely listen to them, and they keep right on talking. They've been looking for listening all their lives, and when it happened, they didn't recognize it. It just shot right on by them. Second issue, and that's you're telling her what you wanted. Maybe you could have said it better. Notice that you talked about her tendency. You said she has a tendency to offer advice when it's not asked for. You maybe didn't intend to, but you criticized her. You just said that she didn't listen to you and instead offered advice that you didn't ask for, but you just did the same thing. You just made an observation about her that she didn't ask for. You described a tendency that she has without her asking for it either. So if she offered advice, you countered by offering advice of your own. You can imagine that that wouldn't have gone very well, wouldn't have made the conversation fulfilling for either of you. You continue. Of course, she truly means to help, and from her heart, her advice and suggestions are meant well. As we discussed my statement, she understandably was a bit defensive. What stumps me is a comment that she made. We'll get to her comment in a minute. Regrettably, most of the crimes of mankind are committed by people who mean well. So frankly, you're saying that she meant well doesn't really say much. It's nice of you to defend her, but Hitler meant well. He meant well because he wanted to purify the fatherland. The people in the Inquisition meant well, and so on and so on. But again, I can't really judge how she listened because I wasn't there. Just giving you some things to think about. Nice of you to defend her, but perhaps unjustified. You said, I said something like, listening versus fixing can be quite helpful as it can serve as a reflection or a mirror for the person speaking to see themselves better. Her response was that a piece of cardboard could do that. In other words, just serve as a reflection or a mirror. Now remember, I wasn't there, so I don't know her tone, but you just let her know that you didn't want fixing. And what did she do? She didn't say, oh, well, my bad, let me just listen now. No, she defended herself. Now there are at least two ways to interpret this. First, she didn't listen to you and she was defensive, just like you said. If your friend had had any interest at all in listening to you, she would have stopped and considered the merits of what you said, but she didn't. Or there's a second possible interpretation, that you really were the problem. My experience, and I'm not saying you were, I'm just saying there are a couple of ways to see this. My experience with some victims, and you may have been one, I don't know, I wasn't there. You're going to have to take this information and sift out what's true for you, is that victims complain all the time, every time they speak. They're stuck in it, period. And victims intimidate everybody because their pain is intimidating. People feel obligated to sympathize. And B, they're very good at making people feel guilty if anybody dares to offer a way out of their victimhood. So, victims state what they want to be listened to, but that's not what they need Now, I'm not saying this was the case with you. I wasn't there, again. But I've seen this so many times. I'm telling you, it's a strong possibility. I go through this with victims pretty much every day. Victims start in on their story, blah, 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 and it turns into whine, 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 whine. And after 30 seconds of that, I've heard this story before. And I stop and tell them what they need to hear. It may be a recapitulation of what they said. It may be a summary of what they said. It may be a suggestion about a different way to see things. It depends on who it is. But simply continuing to listen to a victim does nobody any good at all. In fact, victims almost count every second that you listen to them as votes. So every second you listen confirms that they're right in their victimhood. So victims do need suggestions in order to help them be happy, but they almost always hate them. It takes a wise person with some real guts to tell the truth instead of just listening. Now, was this the case with your friend? Was she trying to stop you from acting like a victim? Don't know. Just telling you there are a couple possibilities. Your friend may not have been listening, or you may have been a victim and she was telling you exactly what you needed to hear. Just something to consider, and everybody who's listening can consider those two possibilities in potentially offensive interchanges that they have with other people. You continued. She didn't see the point in just listening and saying things like, "I'm sorry that happened to you," or "I hear your frustration." She believed that the value in the conversation was that another person could give you a different perspective and offer help that you might not think of yourself. There was no point in talking about struggles if there wasn't that exchange. And again, two interpretations to this. Either she's not seeing you and just defending her need to give advice, in which case, spend less time with her. Or you're not seeing yourself, and you do need to listen. Either way, there's a lesson in this exchange for everybody who's listening, because it would apply to pretty much everybody. We're either talking to somebody who can't listen to us, and we need to find somebody who listens better, or we need to quit being victim. This is from a lady named Sarah, who says, "I have a friend, Kathy, in the Real Love community, who's been a great source of love for me. But one day she said to me by text that I was clinging to her too much. When I asked her to explain, she became critical, and suddenly she stopped returning my texts or emails. I am desperate to talk to her again, but I don't know what to do." So, first and most important, we all have the right to talk to whoever we want to talk to. We cannot be obligated to choose someone for a friend. So if Kathy has genuinely withdrawn from you, she has a right to do that. And you have to accept that. You may not like it, but she can withdraw from you anytime she wants. And, this is the hard part, for any reason she wants. She doesn't have to explain it to you, and you don't have to agree with the reason. Second, something you did was frightening to her. That doesn't mean it was your fault. I'm saying it was just frightening to her. People don't withdraw for no reason. So let's look at some of the possible reasons. First, maybe it was you. It's kind of hard to answer questions sometimes about interactions between two people because I wasn't there. But I can give you some things to think about. So maybe it was your behavior. She said you were clinging. So at least consider whether you were. Some questions you might ask yourself. Have you been texting her a lot, like many times a day? Do you that would tend to be an evidence of clinging, although if you're simply answering somebody's text, it's not. Do you tend to initiate all the conversations, which would seem to some people as though you were being intrusive or clinging? Do you tend to contact her at all hours of the day and night? Again, these are all just signs of clinging, something for you to think about. I'm not saying you were. Just consider whether you were or not, for your benefit. Now, perhaps the problem is all her. Assuming that you're accurate in saying that she was critical and simply disappeared, it sounds like she's protecting herself. She's afraid. Why? Well, again, you could have been clinging a little and she overreacted, or you were not clinging And she simply became afraid of genuine intimacy, which is a really common fear. We want to get close to people, but not too close, not close enough to get hurt. So she protected herself. Don't overanalyze this. Just remember that she can do what she chooses, and you can learn from this. You learn that you can't control friends, and you'll find other sources of love. The tighter you cling, you're the one that used the word, I am desperate to reestablish a relationship with her. That kind of increases the likelihood that you are clinging by a lot. At some time in the future, maybe, and I mean like 2 months from now, you might contact her and ask if she'd be willing to tell you what happened to lead to her not answering your texts, so that you can learn from it. And you need to say it just like that. Not so that she'll contact you again. Just say, I need to learn something about interacting with other people. Would you be willing to tell me what led to your leaving? I'm not trying to get you to stay. You ask for your benefit. So I got another email from this person, Sarah, and she asked me again how she could get Kathy to reply to her. I answered almost identically to what I just read to you, and she wrote me back again. She said this. So this is Sarah, the person who was wondering why her friend Kathy disappeared. She said, I think I'm misunderstanding something, because something about this situation with Kathy is not sitting well with me. Big alarm bells are going off in my head now. Maybe I'm just not hearing the message correctly. And now I'm addressing you, Sarah. You're not hearing what I'm saying because you don't want to hear it. I explained it really clearly twice. Not a criticism, but that's the reason. You simply don't like how this has turned out, and you want it to be different. I keep telling you what it is, but you don't want to hear that. I understand that you want to keep this friend, but you don't get to make that choice. You keep coming back with what you want and with what should be, that Kathy should not have left you, and that you want her to be in your life. And frankly, that doesn't matter a bit. You don't get to say what somebody else should do, and your wanting it has absolutely no bearing on what is. Sorry, kid, but relationships are not like that. And you're repeating your need for an adequate explanation makes it very likely now that you were clinging in the first place, because you're clinging now, clinging actually and attacking and being demanding. And that's just with me. Heaven knows what you were saying to Kathy. So you're demonstrating with me a need to control the love you get, and that is clinging. And you really got to hear me, kid. I'm not trying to change you. And I'm not telling you you shouldn't or that you should stop. You're just clinging. And most people don't respond well to that. Even if somebody does respond to clinging and they're your friend, you're still not going to have a real relationship. You're just going to have a hostage. You continue. If I enjoy spending time with someone, does that mean I'm just enjoying trading imitation love with them? Not always. Depends on how full you are. You are not full, which you demonstrate in everything you're writing, like the word desperate, and your inability to accept where Kathy is, among other things. So you would be trading with her. Not your fault, just a life product of a lifetime of pain. It's just something you need to see that you do. And as you see it, you can begin to make different choices. You continue. As we become more unconditionally loving, we're able to accept and love anybody. But I've also read or heard you say, sorry, I always get a chuckle when people quote me to me. Or I heard you say that we can choose who we spend our time with. Yes, but you're misquoting me in a way that suits you, which you've kind of been doing all along. We can choose who we spend time with, but you can only choose for yourself. You can't choose for the other person to spend time with you. And that's what you want to do with Kathy. You want to make that choice for her. And you are really resisting hearing this. For reasons that do not matter, hear this instead of just analyzing it. She has chosen not to spend time with you. End of discussion. But you want to change your choice, and you don't get to. You continue, though. Is it wrong for me to favor spending time with certain people? When I say that I enjoy spending time with X person, why does nearly everybody I talk to tend to brush it off as just a meaningless trading fest? I get that there was some trading, but when I say I like Kathy, why do I get grilled about why I liked her? Why does it matter, especially if I can see the trading? So your use of the word grilled would be pretty defensive on your part. So you're clinging to Kathy, you're trying to manipulate and control her, and if anybody tries to tell you anything different, you refer to it as grilling. Seeing the problem? So clinging, attacking, manipulating, acting like a victim, all just in a few sentences. Not a criticism, again, but if you don't see it, it's going to bite your butt, kid, and really hurt you. I'm just telling you how relationships work. I know a lot about that. But rather than listen, you keep responding with what should be and how you don't like what is. You're being pretty stubborn about it, and it's going to hurt you. When people ask you about your relationship with Kathy, you call it grilling, probably referring to what I said to you in previous emails, too. You're kind of missing what I'm doing and what other people are trying to tell you also. Relax, kid. Get love from the people who have it instead of trying to squeeze it out of people who really don't want to give it. You say, I get the impression from various people that it's wrong to choose friends. You're really getting off the rails here, kid. And I shouldn't get too attached to anybody. Why am I getting that impression? It's not wrong to choose a friend, kid, but you're not choosing a friend. You're choosing a hostage. And you're fighting the truth that I'm telling you and other people are telling you. You continue, though. Isn't friendship kind of like marriage? Without sharing things like sex or money or whatever, should we treat friends as easily replaceable? Or is it okay to make a commitment to learn how to love each other even in that context? Help me to understand this. No, honey, friendship ain't like marriage. In fact, like not at all. There's much more commitment to marriage. In friendship, we agree for however long the friendship lasts to learn to love each other. In marriage, we agree to learn to love each other pretty much for the rest of our lives. So you really need to listen up on that. You don't get to choose how your friends show up. You don't get to choose who's going to love you. You do get to choose who you want to be friends with. But if they choose no, the relationship is done. So if you have any more questions, let me know. Again, not even a hint of a criticism here. I'm telling you about stuff that's just hurting you. I mean, I can feel the pain in your questions. You're in pain because you've never succeeded in really keeping a friend, and that just sucks. So find some people who are willing to love you no matter what, and just take it from them rather than choosing who's going to love you, kid. You can find them. You send me an email again, and I will suggest to you the names of some people you can get love from. One of them sitting right here in the room in this taping, in fact. I'll give her name out to everybody. She's going. This is another letter. Somebody who says, I feel like I have to prove that I'm learning in real love. Yeah, I believe you. It's common that people feel obligated to demonstrate their progress in everything. In the world and in real love. Why? We're used to demonstrating our progress to establish a sense of worth, to get a feeling of approval. And some people use real love as just another form of conditional approval. So they pretend to be unconditionally loving to get what they want, praise, respect, whatever. So that's really screwed up. But I see people use, for example, truth-telling as a way of getting imitation love. So I've seen people in a group tell the truth about themselves just so that members of the group will then say, wow, that was really brave. Or gosh, that was really truthful. Or wow, you're really growing in real love, not realizing that all they're doing is feeding the need of the speaker for imitation love, which is a little ironic, using truth-telling to get imitation love. But it happens all the time. Bottom line is, kid, you don't have to prove anything to anybody. Doesn't matter what somebody else judges about your progress. It comes down to this simple. You're either peaceful and happy as a result of the principles you've learned and the love you've shared and the people who've loved you, or you ain't. And that's really the final test. So demonstrate your progress? No. You may occasionally ask an experienced, wise person to share with you what you perhaps don't see, but we don't grade people in real love. Otherwise, I'd be sending out little notices. I'd be giving people little gold stars. Can you imagine how ridiculous that would get? Here's somebody who says, I'm part of a church group that meets every other week. We take turns to host in our homes. I'm hosting tomorrow. I was about to send out the information email, about where people meet and when, but I'm thinking of taking one person's email off the list for this week. I can see this coming, because I don't feel comfortable inviting one particular guy. He's harmless, but obviously not to you, but empty. Maybe that's unloving of me, because the purpose of the group is to be welcoming and open for anybody who wants to come. I think it might be that if he comes into where I live, because it's in our homes, I would feel trapped, like he'd know where I live, and I might have to deal with his emptiness on a more regular basis. Not very flattering toward me, but true. You don't ever have to be around anybody you don't want to be around, honey. Anytime. The general rule, in fact, is a guideline, I guess, is to avoid situations where you know that you'll be emptied out, and this might be one of them. But in this case, you're making a decision for the group, not just for yourself. That changes things a little bit, because if you don't invite him, everybody will notice, and then it's very likely that you'll feel even more unloving than you already do. Now, I'm not saying you should invite him. I'm just describing the likely consequence for you. You could, for example, if you're afraid of this guy, simply say, we're going to skip my turn. I don't want to have a group at my house. And then you could go to somebody else's house and he might still be there. But you're never trapped. And you really are afraid of that. You said so. So let's say that he comes over with the group to your house. You can say no individually to anything you want to. If he says, can I sit here next to you? You say, no. I'm going to be sitting somewhere else. Or this seat is saved. You don't have to tell him it's saved for your imaginary friend. You're never trapped, is the point. And you can choose not to interact with him while he's there, and you'd never have to accept an invitation from him to spend time with you after the group, which is kind of what you implied might happen if he, quote, knew where you lived. In short, you're not trapped. But the real problem here is that you're believing that somehow this, what you described as harmless guy, can take your happiness from you. And that's the lie. You already know you can be happy when you feel loved and loving. So stick with that truth, that you're invincible, that he can't take your happiness, and then see what your decision is. You'll figure it out. I don't need to tell you what decision to make. Just gave you some options. Mark wrote me about how he interacts with his kids. They argue with him, they test him, and it often goes poorly. I said that the kids aren't feeling his love, that he's way too much in his head, that he argues with them. So he wrote me back. And he said, okay, so I need help with this. I got really down last night after chewing on your response all afternoon. Your response meaning my response. So that's one of the problems you have, honey, is that you started thinking instead of feeling my motivation, just like you think with your kids and screw it up by overthinking it so they don't feel your love. Every single thing I say to you is to help you see what you're doing that's interfering with your happiness. And because I love you, period. I have no reason to criticize you. I have way funner things to do. I'd way rather watch a movie. But then you get stuck in your head. So sometimes I say things intended to help you to get out of your head. But if you're not trusting me, anything I say to help you is interpreted as a potential or real threat. And then you're right back in your head. It's a vicious cycle. We go into our heads to protect ourselves, because when I'm in my head, there's nobody in there but me. So I construct almost a virtual world where I'm the only inhabitant. So I protect myself in there, but notice the whole attitude. As soon as I go into my head, I'm already defensive. And once I'm there and my thoughts start spinning, I become more and more defensive. So anything you say to me, I'm going to take as a threat to my own little private virtual world. And that's what you do. You don't do it intentionally, but it's real. I'm just holding your hand and trying to help you see it. You continue. I thought I was making real progress, and this feels like a setback. You're specifically referring to my email to you that was intended to help you to get out of your head, which you already admitted you were doing with your kids, which was making you unhappy and them unhappy. And so I was trying to help you get out of your head, and then you were more unhappy because you got more stuck in your head. And the word you use is a terrible one, setback. You will make mistakes, lots of them. You are making mistakes, but the mistakes are not the problem. It's your perspective that they're setbacks, which is a naturally defensive word to come up with when you're stuck in your head. You interpret your mistakes as proving that you're less than worthwhile. You believe that when you make mistakes, you are a mistake. Not the same. You don't realize that you do all that reasoning, but you really do. And again, you're guaranteed to have faulty reasoning because you're stuck in your head again. If you simply trusted that I love you, really, not just in your head. Trusting isn't a thing done in the head. If you just trust that and believe that I find you of unspeakable worth, you'd never be set back by anything I said. Just trust that and trust it once. You're not feeling my motivation because you're thinking. You're looking for me to hurt you because of the defensive posture you've taken. You don't mean to, but you do. And if you're looking for me to hurt you, well, then pretty much anything I say is going to hurt you. You will have fulfilled your own defensive stance. You continue. I took your comments as a criticism. And in parentheses, you write, which I know they weren't. No, you don't. So listen slowly. You don't know that my comments were not a criticism. Not in your heart, or you wouldn't be writing any of this. This whole email would be unnecessary. Do you see that? You're not really certain that I love you. You're not certain of your own innate worth. If you were, this whole discussion wouldn't be happening. And none of this is a setback. It's just an opportunity to learn something that will change your whole life. No kidding. You continue. I felt that I'd failed somehow, or I wasn't keeping up with my wife in terms of getting loved. His wife, for the rest of you who are listening, is also doing real love and sometimes does better. At least her interactions are smoother with the kids than his. Then you continue. And I see that all this is madness now that I'm writing it. Yeah, that's one thing you got right. This is craziness. It's crazy thinking that's a direct result of your fears. You're just afraid and not trusting, which is not a problem if you can just see it and choose to trust instead. You say, I have a psychological block over really letting go and letting you fully love me. Yeah, you really do. And that's really the whole problem. Trust. Complete trust. Half trust is no trust. 80% trust is no trust. Because if I trust you 80%, everything you do, I'm going to put in the 20% and find a reason not to trust you. So we trust completely or we don't. And if you do trust me, it doesn't have to be me, trust somebody else. You'd never feel hurt by what I said. You couldn't, because you'd know that I love you and you'd see why I'm speaking to you, which is all that matters anyway. You continue. I don't think I'm scared of being dependent on you. I already feel that real love is freely available from other sources. And he names several people. And I know that these will multiply in time, so I'm not really afraid that I'll lose you. You must be getting tired of me contradicting you. Yeah, you really are. more accurately, it's not so much a fear of losing me. You don't really have me now because you don't trust me. So you don't really have me. How could you lose me? No criticism. All this is natural. When you're afraid, you do all this defending and stuck in your head and your thoughts spin and you're screwed. After a lifetime of fear, completely trusting somebody would be crazy difficult, as you've discovered. Relax, honey. Relax. You can't do this in your head. Just accept. The alternative is not to accept, not to trust, and we already know where that goes. You already have 50 years to prove where that goes. You're screwed. Don't try harder. Don't think. Relax like a baby and let it in. I've never seen, almost never, seen a nursing baby look stressed. In fact, they look like they're drugged. They're just in heaven. Babies got it all figured out and then we beat it out of them. You said that you're not scared of being dependent. Yeah, you really are. And yet, it's what you need. You need to depend like a child. If you want to depend on me to love you, I don't care. Or pick one of those other people that you named who you're gradually beginning to experience love from. It's not about me. But we do have to trust or depend on somebody. Until we do that, we can't let go of our fear. You said the block's in my head and it's to do with my ego. Yeah, right again. And now you have a chance to let the ego go and be a baby. Babies don't have ego. They just nurse. They just trust, accept, and feed. They don't get all stuck in their heads. But usually by the time they're 2 or 3, we manage to put them up in their head because we've scared them to death. You said, I've spent my whole life trying to be emotionally independent. I admire people who are strong and independent. My mother was like this, and it's one of the things that attracted me to my wife. It feels weak to admit that I need emotional support. Yeah, but honey, you do. We all do. So let go of your, in your own words, crazy evaluation of independence. It's crap. It's a lie. We are all interdependent. I don't want to be independent. I want to be interdependent. I like needing some people in my life. We all need each other. Much more fun and true than being independent, which is, well, yuck. Who wants to be alone? You said, I also pride myself on being wise and being able to figure things out and to fix them. Yeah, well, way overrated. So how do I just relax and accept your love? I'm sure if I was on your love couch, you'd be hugging a crying 2-year-old right now. Maybe that's all I need. So after all that thinking and all that writing, you finally arrived at the truth all by yourself. You're right. It's that simple. Relax and sit on the what you call love couch and be held like a child. Find love. You've already found that. Accept it, which means trust it, which you're working on. You'll get there. And then remember it. And frankly, that's all the formula you need to remember. Find, accept, remember. I love you. Tons. You remember that. That's what you need. You don't really even need all this explanation on my part. This is a coach who writes, I work with a woman, Sally, who is miserable beyond belief. Rare. She's ready to leave her husband, but before she does that, she wants to try to implement real love in her family. She needs an intervention, and that's what she wants. To start with, she wants an intervention with herself and her 2 teenage kids, but her husband wants nothing to do with it. She wants to have the intervention at her house, but I don't want to intrude, this is the coach, where I'm not welcome, and I don't want to cause an unnecessary conflict between her and her husband. So how do I handle this? I've heard this a lot, both from other coaches and from people who have wanted an intervention from me. One person wants to change his or her life, but their partner wants nothing to do with it. Obviously, you can't force one partner in a relationship to learn about real love, but you also can't prevent one partner from learning it either, in this case, her. So the problem is that the resistant partner, her husband, will use anger and guilt and whatever he's got to prevent Sally from learning anything that will make his life inconvenient. And real love certainly qualifies. If she learns this and begins to live it, she'll realize even better all the things that are terribly wrong in their marriage, and he would not want that to happen, would he? So she's in a position to meet a great deal of resistance if she learns a different way of living. And she'll feel afraid of upsetting her husband, and he's counting on that. That's why he's getting angry, so that she'll back off. So should she refuse to learn about real love in order to keep peace in her family? I get asked this question all the time. It's tempting, but consider this. What if she had cancer, and the only treatment that would cure her of her cancer involved her spending more money than her husband wanted? And what if it required that she travel to a town far away? So should she then stay home and die so she doesn't inconvenience him? That sounds like a ridiculous question, but essentially that's what he's doing here with real love. And she does have cancer. Fear and misery are at least as bad as cancer. In fact, worse. With cancer, you only die. With misery, you get to live for the rest of your life unhappy. I'd much rather die quickly than live the rest of my life miserable. She has to save her own life. And from there, she can help to save the lives of her kids and possibly her husband, who, although resistant at this moment, if she becomes loving, he may not resist real love. So somebody has to have the guts to treat the cancer. The coach wrote back, I understand the example you used about the cancer, but what's the loving way for her to handle this with her husband? I can't tell her what to do or say, and you can't either. But I can tell you what has worked in a lot of situations like this. She could say to her husband something like this. I'm going to give you just an example of some words, not the words. She could say, I need this love in my life, period. I am not happy. And this will help me. I need this just as I would need chemotherapy if I had cancer. I would love it if you participated, but I can't make you do that. I can, however, decide to do this for myself, and I will be doing this. And I will be involving the children. They're mine as much as yours. It won't hurt them. It's not like I'm taking them off into a cult in another country, and it might save their lives. So I would prefer to do this here in our house. You can be in the next room if you like. Or if you have really strong objections to my doing this here with you in the home, even though it's mine as much as yours, I can propose two other solutions. I can do it here in the house while you're gone, like the 2 weeks when you're out of town on business. Or I can do it somewhere else, like in a hotel or wherever. If I have to do it somewhere else, though, and the kids ask me why we're not doing it in the house, I will tell them that it's because you won't let me. That's all up to you. But if you make this difficult, I won't protect you with the kids. They're not stupid. I won't attack you about it. I just won't protect you from the consequences of your controlling choice. It's tempting to say that she doesn't have the right to do something against his wishes, but she's not doing something to him. She's doing something for herself. What if she wanted to take a child with her on vacation, for example, or on a business trip? She has the right to do that. She's a guardian parent, and she can unilaterally take a kid with her. It's not hurting him to do something that he simply disagrees with. He can just choose to hate it, but it's not hurting him. She's not changing the kids' religion. She's not moving them to another country. She's not taking the kids from him. She's teaching them what love is, which is going to save the rest of their lives. There are some things people just don't have a right to do in a marriage. For example, she couldn't move her mother into their home without talking to him because that would affect him significantly. But real love doesn't affect him in an adverse way. It could only make her more loving. She wouldn't move her mother into their home because it would be for a long time, months, years. An intervention would be for 3 days or 2 days or whatever it is you decide. And Having her mother move into the house would not have a known benefit to the kids, whereas real love would be. So, yeah, there are some things you don't get to unilaterally decide without your spouse, but there's some things you do. And learning how to be happy and teach that to your kids is something that a partner gets to unilaterally decide that they're going to do. And in the end, it could be just the only thing that could possibly help a marriage that's obviously troubled at this point. So, yeah, it's worth her pursuing, even though she's going to encounter a lot of grief about it. So we've talked about a lot of, I guess, technical answers to questions here this evening, but don't get stuck in the words. Don't get stuck in the answers. What matters most is how you feel. I love you. Feel that. See you next week.